Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the sports podcast of the Kansas City Star and KCUR. It's Tuesday, November 11th, and I'm Blair Kerkhoff. The Chiefs rested while most of the NFL played last weekend. What did those results mean for the Chiefs? On today's show, beat writer Pete Sweeney and columnist Sam McDowell look ahead at the second half of the season, starting with Sunday's huge showdown against AFC West leading Denver. What's it going to take for the Chiefs to come out of there with a victory? After a break, Star soccer correspondent Daniel Sperry helps explain the inexplicable, a loss by the Kansas City Current in the quarterfinals of the NWSL playoffs. It was a devastating defeat for the Current, a team that set league records for regular season success. And then I'll tell you what's on my radar in Kansas City sports this week. Hello, Pete.
Hey, good morning.
Hi, Sam.
How's it going?
So it was a bye week for the Chiefs, and I gathered from listening to Andy Reid on Monday that players got away and everybody got away. Did you guys get away?
I did. Yeah, I went back east and got to spend some time with some family, which was good. And it really was the perfect time for a bye, I think, for the actual players and coaches, but even for us who recover it. It really split down the middle, and then we focused our attention in the second half.
I think so too. Mid-season, it seems to be the perfect place for a bye.
Yeah, I mean, remember that the Chiefs had such an early bye a year ago, and then they played that stretch of games. It was like 3 games in 11 days, and it just added to the brutality of last year's schedule of playing every day of the week, and the fact that there was never an opportunity to rest. But by far the most advantageous part of the bye to me is that the Bills exposed some things with the Chiefs, and the way they played defense was different than what we've seen other teams play defense against the Chiefs since they've gotten hot over the last 5 weeks. And what better time to self-scout and self-evaluate, which is how the Chiefs coaches spend their bye, than after another team has put something on film for the rest of the league to see.
And left the Chiefs with a 5-4 record with that loss in Buffalo 2 weeks ago, and also leaves the Chiefs, based on the results over the weekend, outside the playoff picture. They would be the number 8 seed in the playoffs if the season ended today. I looked in 2021 at this same juncture. The Chiefs were same record, 5-4, and outside the playoffs. They finished 7-1 and ended up being the 2 seed. I'm wondering if there's a feeling now, like then, that this team can get it done in a similar way.
Yeah, I look at the rest of the AFC, and even though it feels like so behind, are we really buying like that the Indianapolis Colts are going to win the AFC? Like, are we really buying the New England Patriots are going to win the AFC? I'm just not there yet, and maybe that's silly because you are where your record is, quite literally. I think what I find most interesting about coming out of the bye is, man, when is the last time it felt like an AFC West game mattered this much? And even from the lens of the Chiefs needing it. I mean, there have been other AFC West games, I feel like, over the Mahomes-Reid era where the other AFC West team was trying to come and take the top place from the Chiefs, but the Chiefs needing the game to get back in. It's just a very unique game to look at as we come out of the bye.
I thought like 3 or 4 years ago, didn't the Chiefs go to L.A. and play a Chargers team? And it seams like early December.
I believe that was a Travis Kelce
walk-off.
Game.
Yeah, made a great move to score the overtime touchdown, and he walked it off. But you're right. It's, to be this late in the season, for there to be a big-time AFC West game and the Chiefs being the team that really needs to win, that's a little different, isn't it, Sam?
Yeah, it is. I mean, the standings, this back half of the seasons can be really interesting in the AFC. I mean, because the Chiefs are typically, I think we're looking at seeding and their path to the number 1 seed, and now you're looking at the path to the AFC West. It becomes really hard for the Chiefs to win the division if they lose in Denver this week, for example. I think less than 10% are what the probability models put it at. So I still think that, the markets still have them as basically an even favorite with the Broncos. And I still think that seems about right. I have not been impressed with the way the Broncos have played. In particular, Bo Nix, I think, has been pretty poor. And the Broncos have also had the 5th easiest schedule in the league. And I think that's what I look at when I shape up the back half of the season is, the Colts have had the 6th easiest schedule in the league. They have the hardest remaining schedule in the entire NFL. remaining. You look at the Patriots, though, they've had the easiest schedule and they have the second easiest schedule remaining. Like, this schedule is historically easy for the Patriots, and whatever you think of them, when you don't play tough teams, I mean, the wins continue to pile up, and they're playing a last place schedule this year, and it's a team that I think might be harder to catch than any of the others, specifically because of who they're playing. And I think just one last thing on it is who they're competing with in these wild card spots is also fascinating, because Jacksonville's not very good, but you lost to them. You don't have the tiebreaker against them. Buffalo is in wild card position. The Ravens are coming. And so, I mean, you could have a really fascinating AFC playoff picture to where, I don't know, the three teams I think we all thought the best were going in, Baltimore, Kansas City, and Buffalo, are playing on wild card weekend on the road, potentially the way it looks.
And I think one thing that we haven't mentioned either, and I know the Bengals were 3-6, but Joe Burrow's back to practice this week. And so you've had a lot of these teams, as Sam was mentioning, come out of the woodwork, but all of the quote unquote, what we thought were going to be elites are hanging around, and everybody needs to make a push. So this is the most interesting, I think, particularly the AFC has been in a long time.
I want to dismiss the Broncos because of their schedule. Not dismiss, but I think a little differently of them, because you're right, Sam. Titans, Giants, Jets, Raiders, those are some of the teams that they've beaten. But they went to Philadelphia and beat the Eagles. That's the one I can't get past that. That was really impressive.
Right. I mean, they're down 17-3 in the fourth quarter. I do think they get away with the DPI that probably alters that game. The quarterbacks that the Broncos played, I mean, let's pull up the schedule for the Broncos this year. And they played Cam Ward and won by 8 points going into the season. They played Jake Browning for the Bengals.
Joe Burrow out.
They played Justin Fields, who almost beat him with 50 passing yards in that game. They played Jackson Dart, who they needed 33 points in the fourth quarter to overcome. They knocked out C.J. Stroud in the Texans game and still won by just a field goal. And then they beat a bad Raiders team by 3 points last week. But having said that, what is even more surprising about the Broncos for how bad that schedule is that they have actually played the second easiest offensive schedule this year. Their offense has had the second easiest schedule this year. So for all those quarterbacks I mentioned that make it easier on their defense, their offense has had the second easiest schedule. So that's why I am not a real believer in how good the Broncos team is. And it's also why the Chiefs are still a field goal favorite, despite being, 2.5 games behind the Broncos in the standings.
Blair, you mentioned being on the bye week. Just watching that Thursday night football game at home. After the game, I tweeted out, how is Denver 8-2, which was a terrible mistake. Hundreds of replies.
Yeah, I'm sure you got your answer.
From Denver fans, and they're taking it quite personally, right? Like, they really feel like this could be, and you cling to that. But I think the whole definition, and as Sam perfectly described it, a paper champion, it feels that's the case with Denver. And if they win this game on Sunday, I do think that conversation may change for them, but it really feels like this is a confirmation for them.
This is SportsBeat KC. I'm Blair Kerkhoff here with Chiefs beat writer Pete Sweeney and star columnist Sam McDowell. Sean Payton has been the Broncos coach since the 2023 season, so he's had 4 games against the Chiefs. The Broncos are 2-2 in those games. The first Broncos win in that stretch ended the Chiefs' winning streak against Denver that had climbed to 15 or 16, some crazy winning streak the Chiefs had against Denver. I want to ask you guys,
and one of them obviously was
the most recent was the game where the Mahomes and most of the starters sat out, 38-0 win by the Broncos on the ice apocalypse day here in Kansas City, as I recall. I think I was the only one in Denver covering the game that day because you couldn't get there. So 4 games, Sean Payton teams have played, Denver teams have played against the Chiefs. How many touchdowns do you think the Chiefs have scored in those 4 games?
That's a good question. Well, let's see. I think Mahomes threw 3 touchdowns before throwing 3 interceptions in the one game, right? Was that still Sean Payton? Or was that okay? That was.
I remember that game, but no. So this is the last 24 and 23.
Well, when Russell beat them, they scored just the one. Sky Moore dropped another. They obviously did not score it last year. I'd say just 4.
2.
2.
Chiefs have 2 touchdowns against the Broncos in 2 years, and as you said, one was without the starters. 10 field goals, 10 Harrison Butker field goals, and 2 touchdowns.
One was a 4th down touchdown too. Remember last year's game where Leo Chenal blocked the field goal? They before the half went for it on 4th down.
Got it.
Scored
It's short touchdown pass
to Travis Kelce. Yeah.
Yep. So, the Broncos certainly have changed and improved, and with Sean Payton, a Super Bowl winning coach, they've created a great defense there. We don't know if Patrick Surtain's going to play, right? Still uncertain about him. And Marvin Mims, of course, sat out last game too, the great return specialist for the Broncos. But I don't know. I see this. It seems to me that the Broncos have built themselves in a way to compete against Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Travis Kelce, and the Chiefs.
Yeah, I think a lot of teams have kind of tried to sort of counteract Kansas City, around the AFC, but I think the Broncos are one of them. And I think kind of in I guess the best way to put it, an anti-Andy Reid type of stance. They're not afraid to let you know about it. I think it is worth remembering last year after the Broncos dropped their playoff game to the Bills, Sean Payton said, "We liked our next opponent." And it's like, you just got crushed by the Bills. So I don't know, maybe you should focus on that. But I think they are so Chiefs focused, and honestly, I think it makes sense because this is a team that you need to get over if you're going to accomplish everything that you need to accomplish. And I think there is going to be a playoff atmosphere on Sunday, even though it is only a Week 11 game.
I think you're right. Denver crowds, even when in the bad times for the Broncos, were pretty rabid. I think this will be a real intense Denver crowd on Sunday. Hey, Josh Simmons is going to play. We're pretty sure of that. How much should he play? Should he start? Well, how should Andy Reid handle the Josh Simmons return?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure he's going to play. I'm sure he's going to be available. But, man, was that a weird press conference on Monday with Andy, in the sense that he didn't want to really even acknowledge Josh's presence in the building, which I was told last week he is in the building. And I even asked him about, well, did you get to see him work out? Are you sure he's in football shape? And I can't remember the exact words, but it was said, I'm not going to answer that. I'm not going to get into all that, I think is his catchphrase. But I think there's real questions about whether or not Josh Simmons should be starting in Denver. And to be honest, if I was coaching, I'd probably lean against it, because I think going back and rewatching the Bills game, the offensive line wasn't great. I think the quarterback could have been better, and I think the receivers could have been better to help out an offensive line that was struggling a little bit. But it was nothing near to the left tackle situation that we saw last year. Like, it didn't bottom out. And I think Jalen Moore probably had his worst game, but if that's your worst game, you're okay. But Nick Ganito is top 5 in the league in pressures. This is a tough assignment if you've missed over a month of football, which, by the way, when I asked him also about Andy about Jalen Moore, he was like, well, he had to just come in right in the middle of the season. That's what Josh Simmons would have to do here, is come right back in the middle of the season. So you've missed, 5 weeks. We have no idea what kind of football shape he's in. You go into altitude in Denver and you face Nick Bonito. I think that's a really tough assignment for a rookie. He's missed as many NFL weeks as he's played. This isn't a player who's got 4 years of a foundation. And so to me, I would play it cautious if I was the Chiefs, and I'd stick with Jalen Moore. I just think it's a really tough assignment.
I think there is an aspect, and I think you have to be careful mentioning this too, because we're not losing sight of whatever it was Josh was going through. But at the same time, he was unavailable for whatever reason, and I think there is an aspect of what does it say to the rest of the team where a player can just go do anything and then come back and he just gets his job back. When Jalen Moore, right, it hasn't been elite, all-pro, outstanding, but it's been good, and I just think he's earned, in a way, the right to keep that job. And to all of Sam's points, if you want to ease Josh back in, I think that is probably smart. And this is a horrible matchup to just jump right back in without having that training camp ramp up. When players injure during training camp, they don't really rush them back. They need him to work out again and work at practice. And so
Christian Fulton's still working on it.
that's right, exactly. And so, I just wonder if all things considered, we do see just Jalen Moore start in this game at least.
Well, you guys are convincing me because I believed that they would just stick him right back in the starting. He'd been off to a good start, probably all rookie team quality season, at his position. And, and if this were a quarterback, you would send him right back in and play him right away and get him every snap. Offensive linemen play every snap. They're them and the quarterback are the ones that get 100% of the snaps on offense. But you guys have kind of persuaded me to go the other way on this.
Yeah, and I don't know what the Chiefs will do, but Benito, actually, I said top 5. He leads the NFL in pressures. He's got 51 pressures this year. Now, the Broncos haven't had their bye yet. The Lions have had their bye, the Chiefs have had their bye, Texans have had their bye. But still, I just think it's a tough spot for. I think we would be talking about this matchup, Josh Simmons versus Nick Benito, if Simmons had played the entire year, and we'd still be saying Broncos might like this matchup a little bit. It's a rookie. Whatever you think of Josh Simmons, and he was impressive. He wasn't all pro level, but he had for a rookie, which was the grading scale, he's been really solid for the first 5 weeks. But a rookie going against the guy who leads the NFL in pressures is a tough matchup. When that guy's set out for 5 weeks, I think if I were the coaching staff, I think I've seen enough from Jalen Moore to feel like it's not a disaster. Like it's you brought in the player for a reason, and he's what you expected, and I would go with that.
I do wonder if we'll even get a chance to speak to Josh Simmons this week. I think if he is going to be back in the lineup, I think there's a decent chance we do get him. If they don't put Simmons at the podium or make him available, a lot of times I'll say to you, maybe he's not going to be playing, right? So I think that loosely is something to watch as well.
I also wanted to ask you about the running back situation. Isaiah Pacheco suffered the knee injury before Buffalo, didn't play in the Bills game, and Kareem Hunt got the start as expected. Brashard Smith basically up to number 2 as expected. And then number 3 happened. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was elevated from the practice squad and did not play and played over Elijah Mitchell, the offseason acquisition. What did you make of that, Pete?
Yeah, I'm happy to share a story. Really, you can only do it in podcast form. I thought Elijah Mitchell would be up. He's on the 53-man roster. And went to speak with him on Friday, and he kind of waved me off. And I remember coming back into the room with you and being like, something weird's going on here. Like, why wouldn't he want to talk? This was going to be what his first start since the Super Bowl loss to the Chiefs with the 49ers. He hasn't been active since. And then suddenly it was Clyde. And we talked to Andy Reid yesterday, and you wrote this up for us. But I think it surprised us as much as anyone else.
For sure. I don't know what Andy Reid was asked about it on Monday and said they were just more comfortable with Clyde Edwards-Helaire's familiarity in pass protection, specifically.
Then why is Elijah Mitchell on the roster? Your number 1 running back's out. Why is Elijah Mitchell? Why do you have 4 running backs on your roster at all? Because you have Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Carson Steele on the practice squad. You're protected by injury from your practice squad already. If he's not protection for your running backs being out, I don't know why he's on the roster at all. It's a situation where they've had other guys that I think could come up and potentially step in. When bringing Mike Pennell, they had to cut a roster spot elsewhere. I think that it's injuries happen, and that'd be a spot I think where you could lose somebody.
The Chiefs took care of their own in free agency, but I just think, you talk about their plans to who they brought in outside. Jalen Moore was a great signing. Now, the other 2 have been Elijah Mitchell and Christian Fulton, and they're, as Sam alluded to, it's tough because they're just players that are taking up a spot for literally no reason, and that's tough when maybe you could have pivoted and brought other players in free agency.
Chiefs' mysterious ways continue. Great conversation as always. Thanks, guys. Let's take a break, and when we return, we'll talk about the Kansas City Current's crushing loss in the NWSL playoff opener. This is SportsBeat KC. We're back on SportsBeat KC, the sports podcast of the Kansas City Star and KCUR, and joined by Daniel Sperry. Hi, Daniel.
Hey, Blair. How we doing?
Good. You covered Sunday's NWSL playoff game between the top-seeded current and number 8 seed FC Gotham, a game won by the visitors 2-1 in extra time in a massive upset, at least by seed. Look, this was a real stunner, wasn't it?
Yeah, a stunning. Not only was it stunning in just the fact that they lost, but in how it happened. I mean, I think all 11 players on the field for the Current were thinking, "Hang on for penalties," and that didn't happen. That's kind of the danger, maybe, of that mindset. But at the same time, they were 60 seconds away from going to a penalty kick shootout where Lorena arguably has the upper hand. Their goalkeeper was up for goalkeeper of the year. She won a penalty kick shootout with like 3 saves in it to win the Copa America for Brazil this summer. She hasn't had a penalty kick scored against her this entire season. We're talking like the female equivalent to Tim Melia stopping penalties for the Current, and that they didn't get there because of the stunning goal at the end of that game by Gotham to win that at the last second.
2 stunning goals in this game, one by Gotham to win it in the last minute, and the one, of course, by Ellie Wheeler to send it into extras. That was a spectacular goal. Great individual effort on her part. I'm watching the game on television. You're there, but it seemed to me that was maybe as loud and as excited as the stadium has ever been. It's only been a couple years, but
only been a couple years. That moment was also, it was just a collective sigh of relief. I mean, everyone was like, "Oh, okay." Like you could almost hear everybody kind of take their breath for a second before before screaming after even more. But yeah, that was the all that last stoppage time. Ellie Wheeler had been kind of setting up for the cross and trying to whip it in, and everything they were doing was trying to put that ball into the back post and head it and see if they could get something to knock around. And I think a couple of times there, the goalkeeper for Gotham jumped her line a little bit. And so Ellie saw it, and she kind of, if you see the angle that she's taking, she's 100% trying to shoot that. It's not like she mishit the cross. She was trying to tuck that in and whip that ball into the near post, and she did an excellent job of it. Ellie has done that a few times. She's gone near post on goalkeepers. Surprised Berger wasn't ready for that scouting report on her, but she was willing to do that. And so it was a great heads up play by Wheeler to whip that one in, catches Berger off balance. She's trying to cheat for the cross, and now the near post is wide open. And the moment we saw Berger scrambling for it, I realized it was going in. And at that point, I think everyone in the press box is just sitting there with their hands on their head like, "Oh my gosh, we all have to either rewrite or get through it." But yeah, it was a moment there that for sure just felt like some sort of inevitability in the favor of the Current.
And they get through the first 15 minutes and almost the second 15 minutes. Tell you what, players were exhausted. A lot of time stopped because of players going to their knees. And I was just thinking, man, just get this to the penalties. Get it to the penalties. And as you said earlier, I liked the Current's chances. If they had done that, it didn't happen. Let's go back, though, Daniel, to the beginning. I don't know how you felt about the Temwa Chawinga's opportunity to play. I was feeling a little iffy about it, but I had no idea about Michelle Cooper. So what was your sense of the Currents? Let's talk about the impact of those 2 injuries on the Currents game plan and how the game unfolded.
Well, I think that the Temwa one was always going to be touch and go. I was more stunned to just not see her on the bench in some capacity. From what I had heard, they were pretty hopeful that she would at least play a part, maybe even start if it was a harder opponent. And Gotham falling down to the 8th seed certainly made it a much tougher first round opponent for the Current. But late as you went on in the week, and Vlaco sitting there on Friday saying that Temwa Chawinga didn't train at all on Friday, then then you're concerned at that point about whether or not she's going to be involved in any way, shape, or form. And so the the hard thing was, I think a lot of people were focused more on, and including myself, maybe too focused on Temwa and Bia, in asking about injuries and all of that. And Michelle Cooper's foot injury is something that Vlatko said in the post game was something that came up even through the national team when they were here. Just a little bit of concern about it. She got stepped on in the final game of the season, and it kind of hurt her a little bit, to the point where she wasn't able to go on it this weekend. And that was the stunning one, because look, Temo Chewinga probably will win the NWSL MVP again this year, unless voters get weird about things, because the NWSL decided to put the end of year ballot out after the first round of playoff games was done. For me, it doesn't change anything, but now people have playoffs to kind of color their judgment on a lot of things. So we'll see how those awards shake out. But without Temwa, you say at least the current have Cooper, usually. To miss Cooper, though, not just are you missing two players, one Timwa and a dangerous player who makes great runs off the ball and is electric when the ball is at her feet. You also have Michelle Cooper, who is a significant creative factor in the game out wide, forces teams to really be cognizant of the wide spaces, which then opens up the middle more for playmakers like a Claire Hutton, like a Lola Bonta, like Dabinia, usually. But now in this game, Dabinia is pushed out wide because Temwa's not there. They have to have their other backup winger backing up Cooper because Cooper's not playing. And all in front of it, the Kansas City Currents defense is a top to bottom effort. Michelle Cooper and Temwa Chewinga's work rate defensively sets the tone for everything that the Kansas City Current do. As much as we talk about the Currents offense and how good they are, they only conceded 13 goals in 26 regular season games. They're only giving up 1 goal every other game. That's a historic level of defensive dominance that the Kansas City Current had this year in this way. And a lot of it comes from a trickle down effect. Now, if the press is laid up front, the midfield is late, and then the ball starts stepping through, and you have moments like that lead to the first goal for Gotham, where Shaw is isolated 1v1 versus Sharples in a little bit of space that forces Sharples to jump up higher. It creates a problem. Those are all trickle-down effects from Michelle Cooper and Temwa Chewinga not being on the field, because what they do defensive work-wise is far and away beyond anyone else in the league, let alone on their own team. And so it's a two-edged sword of a wound, double-edged wound for the Current, because not only are they missing two of their best players offensively, they're missing two of their best defensive players, and it forces the Current into not just like they've been able to patch at times without Temwa one game, without Cooper one game. They figured it out. It's been fine. You miss both like that, you're missing such a significant part of what makes the Current so good, that in 4 or 5 days time, it's quite hard to come up with a game plan of any sort that's going to be effective. You're hoping it works. You have no game testing of doing it at that rate. So just a massive wrench that both of them were unable to go. And Bia Zanerato was maybe half of herself in that game, despite going 100 minutes.
Yeah, a real shame for the Current that they were not available on Sunday. Okay, well, let's do the helicopter view. Listen, you mentioned the defensive prowess of this team and the records they set there. Overall, this was a team that set NWSL records for victories and winning percentage and all of that, and they lose in the quarterfinals of the league tournament. Listen, Vladko Andonovski said after the game he's not going to think any less of this team. Of course he shouldn't, right? He's the coach of this team, and it's had a marvelous season. Dealt a bad hand at the very end, and so they come up short of the ultimate goal. How should we look at this current season?
I mean, that's kind of on the viewer, right? I think like fans will be really proud of this, but I know fans are very hurt today. They're sad, they're down, they're disappointed. I've seen on comment boards, on social media stuff from, wow, woke up this morning hoping it wasn't, hoping it was all a dream kind of stuff. I mean, this loss is going to stick with fans because, in reality, only 3 teams have ever won the Shield and won the championship in the NWSL. All three of those set the league record at the time for the greatest regular season. The Current are the team that do not. And unfortunately, that's going to put them in the boat like the 2001 Mariners, the 73-9 Golden State Warriors, the Patriots. I mean, like those of like, wow, this utter dominance falls short in this postseason, and that, like, people remember those kind of in the infamy of it. And I think this team 100% deserves all of its flowers. It deserves every end of season award that it'll get. They are truly one of the most dominant NWSL regular season teams I've ever seen. But like, this is how we do it in American sports. The playoffs is our deciding factor, and anything that happens in the regular season can be forgotten, can be erased by getting hot at the right time of the year. Gotham have won an NWSL championship as the bottom seed before, in the playoffs. They did it a couple of years ago. So like, this is the Current themselves went from potentially being the first seed to the fifth seed in 2022, and they make it all the way to the championship game. These things happen in American sports. And so it'll kind of be dependent upon how you view it. I think for me, I just am going to remember going into pretty much every single game that I was covering this year and kind of like, how are they going to win this time? Because they just never felt like they were going to lose. You were shocked if they tied. You were shocked if they lost when they did. And 26 times out, you win 21 of those. It's just an insane level of dominance, and to watch the way that they would meticulously force teams into traps and spring them and kill them on the counter, and maybe even let teams have the ball a little bit. Like, come on, come at us. Okay, now we're going to pounce and kill you. The way they'd put teams away so quickly, and in an instant, they could have you kind of saying, all right, this game's over. So that level of dominance is what I will remember more so of this team. And a lot of really good moments, some breakouts individually for players like Izzy Rodriguez, who's the Defender of the Year finalist, Kayla Sharples, who's probably going to win Defender of the Year herself, Michelle Cooper, who was phenomenal. It's just those are the kinds of things that you'll look back at this team and see. And let's say they do win it all next year, right? This isn't a team that's going to go away. The core, the very, very good core of this team is sticking around next year. There might be some new role players, some even, medium role players that are brought into this team, maybe even a star on top of it. Who knows? But, at the end of maybe next year, you're looking back at this team and saying, okay, this is where the foundation was laid, was in this team kind of really being as dominant as it was. Then I think that then you're looking at this in a different light. But ultimately, it's going to be hard for history itself, and I think for a lot of fans to get that taste of what happened at the end of the match on Sunday out of their mouths, and for a long, long time.
Daniel Sperry covers soccer, the Current and Sporting Kansas City for the Star. Thank you, Daniel.
No problem, Blair.
Here's what's on my radar in Kansas City sports. How about a little more heartbreak, this time in college football last weekend as Missouri and Kansas were defeated. The Tigers dropped a home game to Texas A&M and fell out of the AP Top 25. Mizzou has to pick up the pieces as they travel to Mississippi State for a 6:45 p.m. game on the SEC network. Kansas looked like it was headed to a victory at Arizona, but the Jayhawks allowed a final-minute touchdown drive, and Arizona's comeback was complete. KU was down to 2 games to pick up a victory to become bowl eligible. They're off this weekend before heading to Iowa State. And Kansas State resumes its schedule with a Saturday game at Oklahoma State and an 11 a.m. kickoff on ESPNU. Children's Mercy Park, home of Sporting Kansas City, will be the site of a college football game on Saturday when Pittsburgh State meets Northwest Missouri State in an MIAA encounter. These Division II traditional powers played at Arrowhead for several seasons. It's great to see them resume the rivalry in Kansas City. And they're national contenders. The Gorillas are ranked 7th in Division II, the Bearcats 12th. Kickoff is 1:30 p.m. Well, that'll do it for this week. Thanks to our producers, Randy Mason, Monty Davis, Irvin Zhang, Suzanne Hogan, and Gabriella Lacey, and to our editors, Jeff Rosen and Scott Chasen. We'll be back soon with another SportsBeat KC, where we talk sports in Kansas City.